So I'd like to introduce a good friend and one of our speakers today is Rick Phelps. I asked him to help with this presentation today. Rick is an expert at developing teams and comes from Synchronous Solutions. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, Rick.
Oh, thank you, Blake. So Synchronous Solutions has been working in this industry for over 25 years, building teams, building systems, building processes, and we love doing that. We love helping the family business, like Blake's business, build the teams and the leadership that they need to be successful and to give Blake a life.
Yeah. So my name is Blake Christensen. I own a fabrication business. We fabricate and install countertops, showers, source and install cabinets. They're in northern Utah. Valley View Granite's the name of my company. That's a picture of me doing the work back a long time ago. I started in the countertop industry in '97 in Southern California. I've had my business for about 21 years. And again, it's thanks to some of these principles today that has allowed me to be here and freed me up as the owner to be able to spend and volunteer a lot of my time. Quick shout out to Natural Stone Institute. Visit their booth, the Rockheads and ISFA. They're three great associations and organizations that will help you grow your business. Very active in all three and wonderful to plug in and wonderful wealth of knowledge. Also a quick shout out, there is right here, I'm going to leave right here a QR code for a fabricator survey that Natural Stone Institute, I think in 2 sessions they're going to talk about silica and the importance of and the need that we have for fabricators to take their data and a survey for their data that we're doing with a study for Yale. They're going to talk about that in 2 sessions, the importance of silica. So thank you. Quick plug. Okay, really quick. What comes to mind when you see this picture? Anyone want to take a stab at this? Say it again. Wait, thank you. Go for it. What? Wizard of Oz. Yep, Wizard of Oz. Yep. Dorothy. What is Dorothy doing? You know, she's going on this journey, and she goes through this whole ordeal, and at the end of that ordeal, what happens? She gets to the wizard, doesn't she? And she basically goes to the wizard and says, "Hey, how do I get home? I've gone through this whole ordeal." And what does the wizard tell her? You know, he tells her, click your heels that you've been wearing this whole time. You know, she had the ability to go home this whole time. All she had to do was click her heels and do it. And what it took was somebody helping her recognize that, hey, I had this ability, but I needed to be shown what to do. Oftentimes when we're building our businesses, when we're building our organizations, we know what to do, or we have the power to change, we have the power to influence our organization, but we need somebody to help us, we need somebody to, and then we need to act on that, don't we? And so that's just a quick analogy that, you know, we use with our teams, that always remember that oftentimes the answers are already in your team or in your mind. You have these nuggets that you get from events like this. The difference is having somebody help you see that and recognize that, and then apply that and use it to grow. Anything you want to add there, Rick? Or
She had some help, right? She had 3 journeyers going along with her, and the guy behind the curtain, was he real? Yes and no, right? Yeah. He was a real person, but he wasn't a real wizard. And so find yourself real people who can help you build your team and build your business.
Excellent advice. So what we're going to talk a little bit about today is comes from a book called Traction. You're welcome to grab it and look it and read it. We read it, and just some of the principles in this book. These aren't proprietary to this book. They're principles that are pulled from many different disciplines. But we're going to start out with the 3 segments of business. What are those? Anybody know what those 3 segments of business are? Anybody by raise a hand want to take a shot at it? If I had a $500 gift certificate, would it help? 3 segments of business. So when you're organizing your organization, typically you want to have sales, operations, and finance. And the head of those is typically the CEO or the owner. Let me see if there we go. Those are kind of the three big buckets. Anything?
Keep going.
Simple. I'd be curious, if I raise of hands, who has a senior leadership team that's broken down this way with players that are in this way? Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And sometimes, we have these positions, but they're one or two people, aren't they? They're typically the owner holds all these sometimes, or typically, it's hard to identify and branch out into those three areas: that sales, operations, and finance. And that's kind of the start of where everything, everything that we do in any business can be broken up into those three main areas.
A fourth area might be human resources.
Right.
But a lot of times, a lot of companies, until they get rather large, will outsource that.
Yeah. So what we want to talk about a little bit is the accountability chart. And sorry if I can get this. There we go. I wonder if so the accountability chart is a concept of taking that chart and just writing down the 4 or 5 main accountabilities or main responsibilities for each position. You've got your sales, what are they responsible for? Finance, what is your chief sales officer, your chief operations officer, your chief finance officer. And sometimes you can put marketing and sales together, sometimes you can put finance, safety, and HR together. You may have 4 items there, but ultimately they're broken up into that same thing. But the concept of writing down what their 4 main accountabilities are is a powerful concept. So another thing that we talk about is if I can get the slide to work. There we go. There's another book that we wanted to quickly recommend. Is called Rocket Fuel. In this book, it talks about every organization at their head needs a visionary and an integrator. And a visionary typically, they're the creative side of the things. They're the business owner a lot of times. They're the one that has the vision, the Walt Disney that says, hey, here's where we're going. And the integrator is the one that beats the drum beat, that says, hey, yes, I agree we're going there, but we got to make payroll this week. And oftentimes as business owners, we're conflicted because we're not good at doing both of those. And the visionary will create something called organizational whiplash. The visionary will say, hey, we want to offer this line, we want to offer this product. And they're typically 6 to 12 months ahead of their organization. Their organization follows, and then it's immediately when the organization catches up, the visionary whips them to something else, and chases something else. Has anybody experienced that? I see some chuckles. I see, I've been there, or experienced. You'll go into a meeting as a business owner or as the visionary or whatever that is. You have a great 3-hour meeting. You get out of the meeting and you think, all right, everybody's on the same page, and your team walks out of the same meeting and they say, what in the hell just happened? And they're completely confused. And oftentimes it's because we don't understand that you've got to have that combination of both visionary and integrator. And if most of us are not good at doing both, most of us really struggle being effective at both. And it takes us to really understand that and know our strengths and our blind spots to recognize that.
Yeah, the bottom bullet point there under integrator says focus on logic. And one of the things that is missing in most organizations that I've worked with, and I've worked with many hundreds of them, is the logical structure of business. Every business is connected from what you want to accomplish at the top, make more money now and in the future, to every aspect of the business at the bottom. And it's done through a logical structure of basically strategy deployment. So the integrator's role of really connecting the dots and making sure that everybody is aligned and focused on that which is most important is really critical, and it's the last bullet item here, and it's probably, in my mind, the most important.
And it's really interesting, as you read this book, there's a test that you can take, you know, and it tests you to see if you're a good integrator or visionary. And it's really a powerful thing to do. I'd recommend you doing that if you haven't. And when you start seeing that and realizing that if you're an owner, if you're a senior, you know, a leader in your industry, oftentimes you're the one that's holding you back and holding your organization from breaking through that ceiling. I thought they were done cutting today, but that's okay. Another round of cutting. So oftentimes, you know, this is another way to look at that accountability chart. Instead of CEO at the top, visionary, integrator, sales and marketing, operations, finance, HR, and safety. One person accountable, one person can wear multiple hats, and also remember, structure first, people second. So as you build your organization, you might have an organization of 5, but you want to build it to where there's more to do than 5 people can handle. So we might be growing into a new area or offering a new line. But the idea is to build that structure, not thinking of the current people you have, but the positions that need to be filled. And then as you hire and bring those positions in, you might currently have one person holding 4 or 5 hats. But as you grow and as you scale your business, those hats are now defined and written down with the accountabilities, and then they fill out. You know, and that's how we've successfully grown our organization. Is we want to expand it into a different region, and there's all these things that need to be done. Well, we might only have one employee in that region, but they are doing all of those things. And then as they grow, they can instantly see, because we put it in writing and we have the structure already there, here's how we're going to grow and scale that region or that offering. Anything there to add, Rick?
Yeah, so when you build your organizational structure, you want to build it for where you're heading, not where you're at. And one of the important things to think about in that organizational structure and what the roles and accountabilities are for each of them is there is very different work that's happened at the general manager level, at the department level, at the section level or area level. And while you might think of it as one hat in operations, you've really got an operations department manager hat, which is distinctly different than the manager hat, which is distinctly different than the integrator hat that the general manager would be wearing. And so one of the purposes of building out the organizational chart is to make sure that you build a default calendar of how you work, what you're doing through the week, to make sure that you're wearing all the hats. Because as humans, we love to ignore the hats we don't like doing, right? If you don't like finances, you leave that hat off. If you don't like interacting with sales, you leave that hat off. And by building out the organizational structure, even if people are wearing multiple hats, you can ensure that every hat gets worn.
And I think it's much easier if an employee can recognize that, hey, yes, this is a really stressful situation, but it's temporary. I'm wearing 3 hats right now, but I know that there's a plan in place to alleviate that stress. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely true.
But again, what you're trying to do is get it on paper, taking the emotion out of it and saying, we have a relationship, as you know, but we need this work done. We're getting it on paper. Here is our plan. We still value and insulate the relationship, but here's what we need to have accomplished. So, very, very powerful way. In the next section, we're going to really dive deeper into the operation side and the fabrication and installation and all those metrics and the workflows that go into that. But we wanted the next session. We wanted to kind of introduce some of these principles of organization first, or structure first, and then people second, when you are building out your organization. And as Rick mentioned, build what you want it to be, what you want it to look like. Okay, and a lot of the next, so now, you know, your vision. We talked about getting your organization rowing in the same direction and how to make them effective. You know, it's said that if we can get any organization rowing in the same direction, we can dominate any industry. And I think that's true. That's really true. You know, and again, getting that vision on paper, you know, I love Stephen Covey's quote where he says, all broken relationships are a result of conflicting roles and goals. You know, a goal, this is where we're going, and here's who's responsible for what. And if we violate those, that's when the relationship breaks, you know, regardless of what type of relationship it is. So,
Very true.
so a lot of these things, you know, the book Traction talks about a 2-page business plan. And a lot of these things, you know, the core values, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, quarterly rocks, and issues list. You know, a lot of these things, as Rick mentioned, this is going to be mostly for, you know, this is more effective and meaningful and impactful to the higher you get on that organizational structure. You know, your senior leadership team, this is going to be really important, really impactful. And as they lead, as they manage, as they hold their teams accountability, this is how they're gonna the mid-level management, extremely important, extremely impactful. You know, then you get down into the lower you go in the chart, the more direct labor, the more entry-level positions. This is still extremely important, extremely valuable, but this is the backbone behind everything that drives the organization. This is the rudder on the business. So we're going to quickly run through, and again, this is a really condensed presentation. So we're going to run through these pretty fast. We have about we don't have a lot of time, but we'll go through them really fast. Any questions so far? Like I say, Rick is an absolute expert at this. Any questions on organizational structure, how to build it, how to map it out with your team, how to give those accountabilities? Okay, so next we want to talk about a 2-page business plan and getting that team rowing in that same direction. You know, your core values, they're a small set of essential, timeless guiding principles. This is who you are. This is what we are as a business. And this is interesting because these are discovered. You know, you don't say, hey, we want to be this and strive to achieve that. You already have these values in your company. You already have these values in your employees, in your people. The key is to discovering them and getting them to the forefront and then getting them on paper. And it's amazing when you start interviewing. I was talking to a friend that was interviewing, and when you start looking for employees that emanate those core values and hire and fire based on those core values, it's amazing the paradigm shift that happens. You know, you basically are saying, hey, you have our core values of honesty, work, dedication, whatever those core values are. I want you on my team. I may not know exactly where I'm going to put you, but I want you on my team because you're the type of person that meets our culture, that meets our values. This is what defines your culture. And in the absence of defining these, a vacuum is created. You know, your employees are going to create that culture regardless of whether you set the stage or not. So the key is to make sure that you're setting the stage. And anything, Rick?
Core values are something that we introduce our clients to right off the get-go. We've got 5 core values, and it really sets the stage for how we do business and what's important to us as we do business. And so it's important to our clients, and it's also important to our team because, like Blake said, we hire to those core values.
So Rick, when you work with a company and are working with them, and do you help that company set their core values? And what kind of reaction do you get from those companies?
So yes, we do help work with values, vision, and core values, but we usually do it later in the process.
Okay.
So the book Traction starts with vision, values, and mission, mission, and values. My experience is if you do that too soon, it becomes kind of an academic exercise, and it's kind of fluffy, right? And so we talk about it, and then we put it on hold, and we go deep into the process, and there comes a point where every business owner will recognize, the vision is missing or not clear, the culture is not clear, and that's the point when we introduce it to them.
but you want to basically get a feeling for the team and figure out who they are, what they're about, and then start setting those core values.
Yeah, and when there comes a point when you need to hire, where those things become really important and the absence of them becomes obvious. And when it becomes obvious, the process of developing vision, mission, and culture is much expedited. I have seen companies waste months and months and months struggling over what their vision and mission was, and that's just a waste of time. But there comes a point when you can do it in a week or less.
Perfect. Yeah. Let's see if we. So here's some core value examples. And again, we'll continually strive for perfection, does the right thing, shows honesty and integrity, hungry for achievement. The core values at our company are solid. Self-motivated, optimistic, laser-focused, industry expert, and dedicated. And that's how we try to hire and fire by those solid core values. Just kind of a fun play on words.
Right.
So your core focus, your company's sweet spot, this is your mission statement, your unique ability. Every decision is made kind of on that core focus. This is your reason for being. It comes from the company leader. Ours is enhancing places people gather, just because we do offer different. We didn't make it about kitchens or bathrooms. We said, hey, we want to enhance places people gather. That's what we rally our teams around. That's what we say, hey, you're not just cutting out squares and rectangles. You're not just installing wall panels. You're actually building the heart of a home. You're enhancing a place that this family gathers. So core focus, this is your elevator pitch. This is in 3 to 7 words, what it is you do. If you were to meet somebody and it has that aha effect, bigger than a goal, simple language stated in 3 to 7 words. Your niche is what it is that you do that's not a platitude. What do you do that's different than anybody else? Sorry, I'm running through these really fast. Feel free to jump in.
Go for it. Our niche is we help fabricators apply the logic, science, and mathematics to business to build a culture of continuous improvement. So that's what we do.
Yep. And then also on that 2-page business plan will be your 10-year target. And this is where it starts getting a little bit more granular. Hey, we want to have this type of, it could have a net profit number. It could have a how much percentage of market share we want to capture, but basically you have a 10-year target, your marketing strategy, this is who we want to attract, this is how we go about sales, this is the overall big picture of that marketing strategy. We're going to describe our demographic, geographic, and psychographic, and this is the target market with our 3 uniques. Our proven process and our guarantee would be in this marketing strategy. So, three-year picture, and I want to quickly go through these last slides, and I want to really pick your brain, Rick, because Rick has so much experience with this. 3-year picture, 1-year picture, and then rocks. Rocks are, as you work with, you guys call them something different, but as you work through these big goals, these are things that if I fix this or if I work on this, all these little fires would go out. And the concept is having everybody working on a different rock at any given time, because then our life is going to get much easier, over time, and as we accomplish these big rocks. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well.
All right, so this is the area that, in my experience, most companies get it wrong. Their rocks are. It actually comes from a Stephen Covey demonstration that he did, where he had a jar, empty jar, and he put the big rocks in, asked if it was full, put the gravel in, put the sand in, put the water in, right? And the moral of that story is if you don't put the rocks in first, they don't go in, right? And so you want to work on those things which are most important. The challenge that most companies have is understanding what's most important. And I find that very curious because what's most important, it can be logically derived. If you have a business and you want to make more money now and in the future, then you can explicitly define that and what you need to work on and what the measures are. And that's what we do with our clients. It's not a come together and where are the fires and what do we need to work on. It's like, this is what we want to accomplish. Therefore, this is what what projects we need to do. Much more explicit.
So how do you say the challenge is getting them to realize what it is most important? Is that because, why do you think that is? As you work with companies, is it a cloudiness? Is it blinders?
So when we interact with companies who have followed this process or similar processes, and they lay out for example, I was in a meeting, it was a level 10 meeting, which is an EOS meeting, and they were talking about, it was almost the end of the quarter, and they were doing their progress, all the managers standing, as they should be, and no progress, no progress, no progress, no progress, no progress, no progress. And they then rated the meeting 9, 10, 10, 10, 9, 10, 9. And I'm sitting in the corner as an observer thinking, and 2 from the Russian judge. For those who watched the Olympics 40 years ago, you know the reference there. How can you have important rocks that aren't being achieved? And the answer is they're not important. If they were important, they would be working on them. If they were aligned with the business, they would be working on them, which challenges how do they come up with those rocks. So we are teaching them how to align their rocks.
We experience that in our company. We set the rocks and then we forget about them, or we're not accountable to them weekly. You know, that's definitely, I've experienced that for sure.
Yep.
So the key is though driving that awareness. I mean, at least they're writing them down and getting them, getting them there. That's a big step. So
we don't give partial credit, Blake.
Yeah, well. So, but again, the key is to keep those rocks. We didn't get into the issues. Keep those rocks and get those reevaluating those 90 days and making sure that those are hopefully the important and the focus things.
If you hang around for our next presentation, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to link this all together.
Yep.
Because how you choose rocks is directly derived from what Blake's talking about next.
Exactly. Perfect. So, anyways, any questions?
Pavel.
Hi. So you showed a beautiful picture of a boat and people rowing in the same direction, building a team. And yet you mentioned that we should focus on structure first, people second. I'm a little bit confused because the example you gave, you had finance, HR, safety, and marketing cells lumped together. If I have on my team a finance person who is completely clueless on HR, but my marketing cells has tendencies in HR and safety. If I adopt your strategy of safety, structure first and people second, then nobody's going to be rowing in the same direction, right? It seems like it would be people first. So could you address that?
So let me rephrase the question: is if you focus on the structure and then people second, then don't have the people that can fit the structure, they'll be struggling and rolling in the same direction. Am I hitting that right? Yeah.
Want me to take that one?
Sure.
So every business runs on systems and structure. You can either set that system, those systems and that structure, or it will evolve, or maybe more appropriately devolve, and that's not what you want to do. And so the reason you set the structure first is that you get the relationships and the work defined. This is the work that needs to be done in this role. This is the work that needs to be done in this role. And through that process, you define the attributes and the characteristics of this and capabilities of the people to fill those roles. Once you have the structure, it's much easier to fill those roles. And we believe in creating a meritocracy. And so when we help an organization build their team and populate that structure, we're looking at the ability of the individual, the demonstrated ability of the individual to problem solve the problems that the role requires. And that often results in some surprising selections. We just had a company install a 24-year-old running customer service, managing people with 26 and 27 years experience in the business. In other words, they've been in the business longer than he'd been on earth. And the transformation that young man has done in that business is massive. And he never would have been identified in that role if we hadn't gone after and understood what was the problem solving, what was the capabilities that needed that role. And when we interviewed this young man, he demonstrated it all. And now he's doing it. It's really quite rewarding to watch.
Yeah, and back to the example where we had, finance, HR, and safety in the one bucket. We have three, like that's where you start. And then eventually, that's where we started with one individual holding all three hats. We currently have built that out with the structure first and identified, hey, this is now too big. And because of exactly what you just said, we don't have an individual that's good at all three. If you're an accountant, you're not a good safety person. You're not a good HR person. But we had to make the decision, do we bring those additional positions up to the senior leadership team, or do we put the safety manager below the CFO? Is that making sense? And so by doing the structure first, this is a living document. You're going to constantly be building and plugging and playing, and this guy is below this person. And so we chose to keep only three, keep that, there's a single spot for that leg on the senior leadership team, but we have somebody below that's a safety manager, somebody below that's over HR, somebody below that's over PR. And same thing with sales and marketing. You might have a marketing manager that's below a chief sales officer. Is that making sense? But you're using that technique by saying, as we're growing, this is now the structure that we need. This old structure worked, but we've outgrown it. So that's, and it's not that you're putting, devaluing the people at all. You're just saying, here's the work that needs to be done, and here's how we're going to scale it and how we're going to roll it out. Did that help? So no, excellent question. Thank you.
Another thing that we do, and you should do when you're thinking about your organization, is we do an analysis. We call it chunks of work, but we look at what needs to be done. What are the chunks of work that need to be accomplished, and which of the buckets do they need to fall in? And there's only so much work an individual can do rationally, and so in the organizational three-person organizational chart there, operations included customer service and production. Yep. Well, when the business gets larger, that'll often split into three roles. Somebody that's in charge of the project managers and customer service, the kind of the front office side of it, somebody that's in charge of the production facilities, and somebody that's in charge of field. At least that might be one way to organize it. Depends on basically how every business is different. And so the analysis gets into what's being done, how does geography, markets, all that stuff come into play, and then design and fill your organizational chart appropriately.
One example that we went through is we have 7 locations, and we had to really dive down and figure out how to open a new location. And we went through about 4 iterations of it. It was, hey, we're gonna hire somebody that is a regional manager, and we want them to oversee the sales, because we have one location that fabricates and satellites sell, measure, and install. And so it was very, very difficult to find somebody in that satellite that's an expert at all 3, even though we tried. That was our structure to begin with, and we set them up to fail because they were good at one and not good at the other. And so we had to realign that, and we've gone through, like I say, about 4 iterations. But again, we're always looking at the structure first because we want to set our people up to succeed, and then we ask the questions: can we find an individual that's qualified to do all three? And the answer was no, we couldn't. So now we have, I'm not saying we have the answer, because just like the Dorothy picture, our answer is different than your answer, and and it's what works for your culture, it's what works for your organization. But is that making sense? Because
if I could
Yep.
build on that. So when you're looking at the hierarchy and the different levels of work, an extremely important part of management is designing the business systems, right? And so there's fewer and fewer people who are inclined toward and capable of designing systems. And so you want to find those people in your organization, put them in that role. If you can take that systems design work out of it, for example, in opening a regional sales office,
Yep.
and you design the systems and the structure and the process, then the individual you can put in there can be a lower level management person, because they don't have to do the systems design. You're giving them the structure and the system. And that's one way to take that complication, that expertise out of it. When we work with smaller clients, we work with clients under $1 million in revenue to over $300 million in revenue, at least currently. And so it's very, very different when we're working with a very small company. And we provide all of the higher level thinking and structures and systems. When we work with the very large corporations, we're teaching them how to do it and helping them identify the right people for those roles. So it varies as you go up and down the spectrum, but taking the complexity out of the work enables you to put different qualities of people or levels of people.
Well, and to kind of feed off your example there, Rick, of taking a 24-year-old that was the right person for the position based on his makeup, based on who he was, and now he's thriving in a position that's managing people that are twice his age, because the higher level identified, hey, this is the type of person we need as a manager. And oftentimes we make the mistake as business owners, we take our best installer and then make him a manager of the install teams, like multiple teams. And he fails, or she fails, because we don't realize that, yes, he's a great installer, but what makes him a great installer necessarily doesn't make them a great manager of people. And until we identify the structure and the type of person that's needed for that position, we're just going to set him up to fail.
Right. And let me clear something up here. We didn't just throw this guy in the role.
Right.
He's had extensive training and management from our business. He has an executive coach. In fact, I sat next to him out there while I was waiting to get in here, listening to his coaching session. So he's learning how to be a manager. He's learning how to treat people, how to manage up. He's actually got to manage the owner of the business a little bit. He's got to deal with, initially, people who had a lot of resentment to him. And he had to learn a lot of skills for how to be a manager and what that meant. And the kid had no experience, but he is thriving.
Well, thank you. We're out of time, but we're going to be back here in about 5 or 10 minutes for the next session that talks about, let's see, I was going to say, it dives really more into the fabrication and the development of that operations, developing the fabrication process, the operation metrics, how to look at your business from a $T perspective or a throughput perspective. And hopefully we'll be back in about 5-10 minutes. Hopefully it's extremely useful and extremely powerful way to look at your business. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.